106.5 WFMP. This is Community Control Now, the show seeking democratic community control of public institutions with a particular interest in the U.S. policing apparatus. I'm your co-host, Vincent Gonzalez. Slamming Cadillac doors, Michael T. Man, say what's up to the people.
Power to the people.
Hey, Community Control Now seeks to end the rampant abuses by the state, which greatly target persons of color and the economically disadvantaged. Community Control Now believes in all power to all oppressed people all over the world. For today's show, man, we got pound for pound, heavyweight champ and the revolutionary historian and/or, man, a communications game here, man. Dr. Jared Ball, man, salute here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
What's up to
It's
the people, yo?
Peace,
Man,
peace.
Communication Studies professor at Morgan State University and B. Moore, co-contributor Black Power Media. I mix with my light. Black radical tradition, hip-hop preservationist, author of the book, The Myth and Propaganda of Black Mind Power, man. And it's just, like I said, it's an honor and privilege here. We just going to get into it. Well, really wanted to talk to you about your book, Myth and Propaganda, the Black Mind Power, because we're in Louisville, Kentucky. The myth is it's on Jose Canseco levels of strength. You feel me? Like this is a Booker T. Washington town. This is a Whitney M. Young. Whitney M. Young is from around the way, so you're familiar with Whitney M. Young, man. So like that's the pervading notion for Black liberation in this town, man. We wholly disagree with that. So we just want you to, man, hit some of your points on hit some of your key points on your book here, and we could just kind of riff off that.
No, so again, I really appreciate being invited on, and the second edition of the book is on its way. Should be out sometime in the spring.
Right on.
But the short of it is that I'm arguing, and really I'm just trying to trace the origins of what you were just saying. How did we get to a point where Black liberation and revolution is based on Black capitalist fantasy, myths that are not supported by any data, like circulating dollars and buy Black and Black entrepreneurs will help the community and all this, and at best replacing what the Panther Party had defined as survival programs pending revolution as the revolution themselves. So in other words, it is no accident that we have arrived at a place where in your community and elsewhere throughout this country and really throughout the diaspora, there has been an imposed concept that has been meant to replace things like we were just talking a little bit off air, everything from revolutionary into communalism, socialism, some communism, scientific socialism under the United States of Africa, Nkrumah Toureism. I mean, all these various isms that African people have developed to address their particular horrific situation have been intentionally replaced and redefined as, hey, get your business together, circulate your dollar. And all of this has ever been meant to promote a Black bourgeoisie that, in quite neo-colonial fashion, links up with those in power to get its crumbs and leaves the rest of us in ever devolving conditions. So, or at best in conditions that will never close in terms of gaps or differences. So that's really what I'm trying to do.
And I think it's, a lot of times you get it where it just gets dismissed away as, oh, you being a hater, you don't like Black business and you don't want self-determination for Black folk. And I mean, just coming from, this is part of your book here. So there are 40 million African Americans in the United States, and our median wealth is at 40,000, so 40,258. In order for us to have that purported, over $1 trillion, but I've heard that so many times.
And I think you're saying income, actually, not wealth, right? Those numbers.
I'm sorry, income.
I think that's income and not wealth.
Yeah, my apologies. Yeah, those are two.
No. I just want to be clear.
Wealth is like, say your assets, boats, and timeshares in Tahoe or whatever.
Right. land, stock, et cetera, and so
Yeah,
forth.
yeah.
Or
So
what you're worth after you've paid everything off and don't owe anything, and that might
the
even
balance
produce
sheet.
some income for you. And my numbers in that book were even off depending on who you listen to. So like Diedrich Muhammad will say that if you look more carefully, it should be down to about 6,000 per
Oh.
Black household, and by 2053 it's going to be zero.
One of the chapters of your book where you say, freedom was the call, instead we got a bank. So you see how like if we only got but there's only so many hours in a day, and there's only so many things that you can, like, let's put all our eggs in that basket in terms of like what's going to free us. If we doing too much of that, okay, black buying power, black business, black capitalism, it's like we're missing out on all these other things when, like I said, we ain't got it.
So like, as you were starting a minute ago with because a lot of the response I get, in fact, doing a live discussion about this later today, in fact, that a lot of the response that comes my way is often saying that I'm hating, I don't support black business or entrepreneurialism or black sovereignty, or well, you don't have a solution, so therefore your criticism is invalid. And part of what I'm saying is I do offer steps towards a solution in the book, but frankly, I agree that I'm not offering a solution particularly. And what I'm suggesting is we can't build towards any real solution without being clear about the mythology upon which a lot of people's arguments are based.
Yeah.
And if so, it's not that so it's not about just hating. It's about saying, and it's not about saying I have all the solutions. In fact, I'm saying I don't. I'm just saying this isn't it. And this is proven by data and history. I mean, this isn't even just an opinion anymore, or just it's really like it's science at this point. This is not a pathway to solving any of these material conditions that we suffer with. So that's all I'm trying to say.
They do that to us with the police abolition thing. You go get rid of the police, and then what you gonna do with it? Replace? Not this. This clearly isn't. You know what I'm saying? Let's go from there. Where this ain't popping. And Mike, you wanted to say something?
Yes. Again, trying always to keep it dialectical, is that so much of that opposition, as you probably know, Professor Bald, is being driven by desperation. Because our situation is so dire. We've always, post-enslavement, and being unable to progress sufficiently under our capitalist rule, we're looking for any type of strategy that gets us out of this. So some of it is well-meaning. And much of it is also driven by a conscious petty bourgeoisie who could care less about the collective betterment of the people, but are motivated purely by self-interest. As we used to say, they're wannabes, wannabe black capitalists, wannabe black imperialists, and they're couching their self-interest in some type of black liberation. So we got to kind of distinguish between the two. Not all of this is being promoted purely by class interests. Some of it is a lot of working class people who, can't get jobs or don't like their jobs, and they're figuring that, hey, I got to get a business to survive. And that's cool. But even they need to know that as much as that may help you individually and selling things and making products, and we're not against any of that, but don't confuse that as some kind of strategy for liberation. That's why when we talked about our survival programs in the Panther Party, we didn't try to delude people into thinking that, hey, we can solve your problem by you getting a free breakfast. We're showing you, what a civilized system should be doing. We're giving you a model, a prototype, and something that this is what we must fight for on a broader scale.
That's just bars to me. I really appreciate all of that. That's exactly I haven't said it any better than that. I couldn't, but that's exactly my point. I'm not arguing don't start a business. I'm not arguing don't support one another. I'm not saying whatever resources we have, we shouldn't pool. What I am saying is those who come to you, it's like, I do think of that scene in The Godfather, those who come to you and say this is the solution, that's the enemy. That's all I mean by that. So
keep in mind why.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm over exaggerating.
So few of these wannabes and these black business people who aren't capitalists, why isn't the cooperative model something they pursue?
Well, so this is just a couple of things real quick, because I in the jokes, I don't want to get lost. I don't want it to get lost. What I'm saying is first of all, I agree with you, and I think that's why propaganda is actually in the title of the book, because so much of my argument is more about the messaging and the narrative that has been created, the psychological warfare, in fact, that has been created to target incredibly oppressed people, to say specifically with the goal of saying, when you get frustrated, don't join an organization, don't get radical, don't join, don't think of militant ideas, think of something that for us, those in power, is safe. Think of a business, think of capital, think of investment, think of we got to get our money right before we get our politics right. All of these things are intentionally created fantasy. So I've tried to trace some of the history of how that messaging circulates, unlike a dollar, and is used as a weapon against just what efforts you're talking about. And even the cooperative idea, to a certain extent, again, I agree that everything should be on the table, but cooperatives are themselves insufficient if we're talking about the total, but why they're not tried enough is simply because, first of all, there's not enough individual profit and benefit in it. And then even if you do it, there isn't, and this is always the problem that Black people face, or any colonized or poor community faces. If you don't have resources, you cannot create the wealth that will catch up to those in power, particularly because their wealth is ultimately a result of them exploiting us.
Yeah.
So and they didn't circulate dollars to get that wealth. They didn't create small businesses to get that wealth. They didn't. All the things that they tell us to do is not how this wealth was created. So these are the things that so really all I'm saying is, listen, without judgment, I'm saying everybody in fact, the only luminary that I've identified who was clearly never wrong on this issue was George Jackson. As he's clear on many things and correct on many things. But everybody from Dr. King to Malcolm X to Du Bois to Garvey, that's one of the few things they agreed on at certain points, my point is, all across the political spectrum at various points in their careers, people have bought into this idea that if we just take this money and we shift it over here, we can create industry and we can do this and that. And there are so many reasons that I allude to and get into some in the book, and I know we don't have time really to get into here today, but there's so many reasons why that doesn't work. And why ultimately I'll just stop here with the Panther Party's point, is that it was pending revolution.
Yes.
It wasn't a replacement of revolution. It was just, this is what we have to do to get over until we can get to the next level. And too much of the messaging stops at that point and says, no, that's all we got to do.
Yes. And the next level, or the ultimate level, we felt, and I still feel, is taking state power. See, ultimately, a lot of these forces either don't want to or are afraid to struggle against the capitalist state. See, the capitalist state, and I think it's a lack of understanding of what the state and the state's relationship to the capitalists are. The state exists to defend capitalism. So you're going to have to defeat, and I don't have the formula for that. If I did, I probably wouldn't say it, publicly. But ultimately, the state is going to have to be dismantled. And that's a Herculean task that a lot of folks don't want to undertake. So that can get you locked up.
That's what I'm saying. It's a form of opportunism to say, it's like what it's saying, what it's not saying.
But even in a non-opportunistic way, I mean, I get it. I mean, I feel the same way. It is much easier to think that if I just shopped over here and saved over there, you know, that's much easier than I got to actually build with you. I got to go offline and get, you know, I got to sit in rooms with you and I got to talk to you. And we got to figure out, as you said, what would actually happen. So that's why I'm saying, like, I'm not advocating one or another particular solution per se with this argument. I'm just simply saying that this is not the path. So people, you know, and many of the people who would claim after only being challenged, oh yeah, well, I agree, it's only pending the revolution. Well, then you have to make that more plain, because so much of the narrative that you use to sell your wares or promote your YouTube or whatever is saying, no, I got the strategy. All we need to do is change our mindset and change and you know, shift our money and think about wealth creation instead of being poor all the time. That's not how, you know, because ultimately that's what I'm saying about the mythology, that it's designed to make poor people accept that they are to blame for their own poverty.
It gets into this weird moralistic thing a lot of times when I was growing. When you hear someone start talking about Jordans, as if, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're just like, it replaces any sort of like wealth or asset accumulation. You know what I mean? When you hear like, we buying Jordans and lottery tickets instead of, you know, when you get on that, and that's when it's like, oh, this is way more than, we're not talking about business development, or this is a judgment of some sort to Black people. And it's like, you get tired of hearing that, because it's like, man, that's the last thing our people need, is some sort of, like, you know, moralistic finger wag, when it's like, yo, we need to be fighting in this direction. You know, we gotta be on an Emmett Smith. See a cut through the hole, man. Don't go over here, you know.
Not a Cowboys reference. Not a Cowboys reference. Come on, man. Don't do me like that.
He was a Boys fan, but I mean, you know, he was shifty. He saw that cut. But you feel me? You dig? But we going into that.
No, but if we could finish that analogy and make it useful, since you dragged the Cowboys into it, what makes any running back, maybe except for the exceptions like a Barry Sanders or a few others, is that front line, and it's the other options. And that's sort of the point that I think I'm trying to get at. If we want to have a successful running game, we have to have an offensive line that's going to move these mythologies out of the way. And right now we keep running left, and they're stacked up over there, and they're waiting over there. And yet we keep coming to the huddle saying, nah, just do it again. Just do it one more time. Just follow me to that same lane and we'll get, no, we gotta do something else and come up with another plan. So that's really all I'm trying to say with this argument. And it's really just a very specific and I think limited, but it does, to both of your points, it points to what is the real pessimism in our political analysis right now, which is that we don't feel like we can struggle against the real power. We don't feel like we're ready to take on, and we don't want to do what is the hard work and the challenging work, and to your point, the threatening work of really building with people offline when there are no mics and cameras and nobody's getting likes and views for it, and you got to sit and listen. I mean, you have to sit and listen to people and try to get them on the same page.
We have to attune and fine-tune a class analysis, because I'm really coming more and more to the conclusion, you know, after 5 decades in this movement, that our class analysis is still woefully underdeveloped. Now, we've always had petty bourgeois forces, again, post, I'd say, Reconstruction, really in the leadership of the movement. It's always been challenged by radical forces who have a more materialistic and radical analysis of it. But we have to face the fact that for most of that post-slavery time, the petty bourgeois wannabe forces of various stripes have been leading our movement. Now, what many of us saw in the late 60s, their leadership was being challenged with the strength of the radicals, you know, led by the Panther Party, not just, you know, the Panther Party, but with the defeat of the radical formations in the 70s. And I saw this up close and personal. the petty bourgeois forces didn't have to contend with us like that. And I would maintain, with the exception of a few periods, I think during the 80s, the anti-apartheid movement, perhaps the Ferguson uprising, some more radical forces emerged. And a few years ago with the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor forces. But the petty bourgeois forces are still in control of our movement, and they're the main forces primarily promoting that fantasy.
It's almost
not the working class.
It's almost as if it's like you existing on different planes. You know what I mean? It's like there's no social or political analysis of these things. It's purely, I mean, it's like, you know, they'll even say leave politics out of it. That'll be their main, you know, once we get on that plane, it's like we're done at that point. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we gonna do on that? So it's good stuff here. I know we're getting short on time a little bit. Community Control Now-Louisville is a grassroots political organization with the prime objective of democratizing the policing system of our town. Tell us some more of your thoughts about community control of the police as a strategy to ultimately upend the current public safety apparatus.
Quote unquote.
You know, I am, first of all, I'm in support of a complete abolition of this current policing system. How, again, I don't know exactly what form that abolition should take or how to get there. So I just commend really all efforts to head in that direction. And I just encourage as many of them to become as radical as possible in terms of efforts in that direction. It's essential if there is to be some advance that Black communities and other oppressed communities find ways to alter the policing arrangement, come up with new ways, new forms, new institutions, because the current institution, again, as I know you all know, is really has only ever been designed to suppress labor in the North and enslaved Africans in the South, and that combination is what we're dealing with to this day. Indigenous people, yeah, absolutely. And even going back to the versions that policing has borrowed from its European ancestors. It's all about imperial colonial control and management of, as you were saying, the state. So that's what's causing the issue. And it doesn't matter. That's why we see whether the cops are Black, white, brown, whatever, they do the same thing. So I was in the military. It didn't matter that I had a Malcolm X book in my pocket. The ship still functioned as it was meant to function. And I still made it to whatever extent I participated. So it doesn't matter what your particular ideology or race or religion or gender or sexual identity. None of that matters once you're plugged in and serving these institutions. These institutions determine the outcome. So that's why we had that CIA Latina commercial, you know, inviting Latinas to find Latin Americans to find their migration dreams in the CIA. And we see the all attack helicopter, LGBTQ, you know, the first, whatever. I mean,
Scandalous.
Great, whatever. I mean, you know what I mean? So, but that anyway, so it's those institutions that have to be dismantled. So I commend whatever efforts you all are taking towards that direction. But I admit I don't have much expertise in that, and I don't have much experience directly in organizing in that work. So
we're running off a plan from Chicago. The forces up there, the National Alliance of Racism and Political Repression, Frank Chapman and his forces up there. That's sort of our they have an 8-point plan just to, you know, get like some budget policy oversight, things of that nature. That's where we're coming from. You know, a citizen council that FOP contracts got to run through the citizen council. Just something like once again with the Panthers, we make no illusions.
Yeah, we say pending revolution.
Yes,
pending abolition.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
Ultimately, even abolition won't happen until the capitalist state is dismantled. There's no way they're going to disband the police, a part of the state, until the state is dismantled. But that's a long-term goal. But in the meantime, we've got to do something other than just have cameras and black police chiefs. We know that doesn't work. We've got to fight for some real power over the apparatus itself. We know we'll get resistance, but hopefully we'll raise the consciousness of the people in that struggle to take it to the next level.
Yeah, right on. I love it. No, that's exactly right. Yeah,
I got like 5 more minutes on it here, man. I just wanted, like, we could kind of fill in the gaps with, outside of the police thing. I only had the 3 questions, but man, what's up with? I just want to talk about hip hop for a second, man. I love it's wild, right, man. So my pops grew up in Newark, New Jersey in the 1970s, and I was going through my pops. He passed away when I was 14, but he left a book of rhymes from 1978 that was just kind of like so he was there during that time. And it was kind of, it's wild, dude. Like, he had a book, you know how like a lot of that was that Casanova Fly stuff where, I'll take your girl, yeah. It was a lot of that, but that was the swag at the time. So it was like,
my pops died in 92. I can't think of a better kind of like memorial to be left with. I think that's wild, dope. Dude. Regardless of the content, I think that is very dope. I feel this
deep connection with hip hop, and I remember like riding with my pops, listening to The Message, and that's what I felt like. So we talked about that PBS hip hop documentary, you know what I mean? And it's like, so it's the attempts that it tried to make to encapsulate, and like also a lot of my I love that Can't Stop Won't Stop book. I'm pretty sure you've familiar with it. I am.
I have a couple issues. I have a couple issues, and I've raised them with Chang over. We should build another time when we have more time. I'm happy to come back. You can come on my platform.
Yeah, let's do
a whole thing because there's a lot more to say. But just real quick, the one thing that I'm mad that I didn't say in all of my coverage of that PBS thing is that I completely left out the fact that they said not one word about any of whatever we think of religion. They said nothing about Islam, the 5%ers, the history of teachers, all of that. They didn't say any of that.
Brand new.
I was like, how do you talk about this without talking about the impact of that on hip hop and black people, etc.? So I was like, what are they doing?
Yeah, it was like,
anyway.
I feel, I know we could go.
There was a lot there was a lot they didn't do, but look, I'll happily come back to talk about it.
Let's
but just quickly, I mean, my thing with Chang is that, and Dan Charnas, who shows up in that piece, is that I do think that they help create this mythical narrative that black people were suffering, and then hip hop came, and then we got better, and everything got better. And like the documentary is saying, we tanned America, and we paved the way for Barack Obama and all this kind of stuff, like as if this was like we're all good now. It's like, what do you anyway?
It whispered capitalism here and there, and I noticed that like we're at a point in the movement where the petty bourgeois they'll mention anti-capitalism as it's an adornment, it's an accoutrement to an overarching narrative that they
JC was like calling him the N-word.
Yeah.
They didn't really say it like how do you mean? What do you mean calling you a black capitalist is like calling you the N-word? What are you talking about?
Wow. I thought that was so like, why did you go? You went straight there. Like, he was like, I mean, of all the
things, he felt defensive. That's what we've been talking about this whole conversation. The bourgeoisie is they feel that class analysis comes in. They get he's talking about me now. No, talk about the white folks. Talk about the white folks. And like, no, well, you like you said, you're a billionaire. You and your wife are
Black
billionaires.
Republican money I got coming in. Come on, y'all.
But I did like that they had KRS-One in it. Now he's a little bit too hotep for me, but overall I find him as a comrade. His analysis is somewhat radical, and I'd like to have seen him more in that.
But that's what I was saying. My comrade Rosa Clemente was in there, but for a blip. And they left out all of the history of her activism and all of the history of all of the work. They left all of that out. So yeah, you saw KRS, you saw they even mentioned Dead Prez for a second.
Oh, yeah. Dead Prez
for just a second, literally. Yeah. It's wild, but yeah.
And then they went back to Killer Mike and his black businesses and defend the Atlanta police.
But come on, Mike's
it's not about the music.
Yeah, it wasn't about the music, but man, thank you, man. It's a solid dude. And we just want to and this anyway. Yo, thank you so much, man. It's an honor and
likewise.
Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir, man.
Likewise. Thank you both very much. Peace, everybody.
Peace.